Welcome to part 13, the final part in the MySQL QA episode 1. We'll be talking about Gnuwin32, a very powerful extension to the DOS command prompt, which I would highly recommend installing on any Windows machine, at least any developer or QAer. So Gnuwin32 brings the power of many of these utilities that we've seen into Windows. Without it, there's not much available by default in the DOS command prompt, or at least not much of the power which is there from the Bash Unix utilities. So let's have a look at how we can install this. So here we have the downloadable, but if you don't know straight away how to get there, search for Gnuwin32 in Windows. Simply go to the first link shown, Gnuwin32 on SourceForge, download all, download, and then you end up on this page where you download this executable. And all this executable does is it creates a bunch of directories, and it doesn't install any TSRs, it doesn't install any terminate and stay resident utilities. It simply goes and downloads all of the packages that are required and puts them in a directory, and then you can just reference it as exes. So once you've installed all this, you can go to the command prompt, and I would highly recommend installing Gnuwin32 into the Gnuwin32 directory under root. And just to give you an idea of what this looks like, here you have a number of directories, and then within the bin directory there we have all the executables. So for instance, tr, there's the set, sleep, there is zip, gzip, tar. All of these tools are available now within Windows. You can run set.exe and have set available in Windows, which makes for some very powerful regular expression ability, etc. Also, don't pay any price for Windows utilities that are free available elsewhere. For example, you might know WinRAR, and there's probably some other utilities that allow you to uncompress tar files, uncompress gzip files, but you can simply install Gnuwin32 and run gzip-d from here, or tar-xf. After you've uncompressed gzip. There's also unzip and so on. So all of these utilities that are available in Windows, that are available in Linux and Bash are available here too. Once you've installed this, and once you've got this Gnuwin32 bin directory available, then I would highly recommend updating your pod. And if you don't know how to do this for your specific version of Windows, just go and have a search in Google. But basically it's just in your computer properties, and add somewhere along in this pod the Win32 bin directory, so that when you're in another directory, you can now run set, and it will automatically reference the set in the Gnuwin32 bin directory. However, there is the first issue here, and it's something that we got to be aware of. For instance, if I do echo test, this echo is a built-in command within Windows. We can check this by using /?, which is something that Linux utility does not understand. See, it doesn't understand what this means. So this echo command is the Windows echo command, and you can see the output here. So let's give it a fully qualified path and run the same with a Linux utility, and notice how already the output is different. And of course, if I try to do something like this here, it will just think that I'm passing in some literal text. So in this case I would have to use --help, and I would get the help for the Linux version. So if you're entering some commands and you've said something like echo test, and you need to enter some further commands, but you want to make sure that you're using the Linux utility version of a particular command, then you have to specify the path and then the utility name. So echo in this case doesn't make much sense, but you get the idea. Another example of the same is find. So if I run find from within the Gnuwin32 directory, we get an output very similar to the find that we would see when we run it on let's not run it here. So we get a very similar output as the one we're used to on Linux. However, if I use the Windows version of find, then I get the Windows output. So you can use the two utilities. You can even, do some part in Windows, pipe it to some part in Linux, use it with a Linux utility, back to a Windows utility, back to a Linux utility. All this works fine as long as you make sure that you understand exactly which utility it is you're running, whether you're running the Linux utility from Gnuwin32 bin, which is in the path, and so often it will simply find it. But if you have something like echo or find, and there might be a few other ones that have a similar name within Windows as the utility name within Linux, then you're just going to make sure that you have the right one, and so you have to do that by specifying the path wherever necessary, wherever you want to use the Linux specific version of a particular tool. So that's the first issue. The second issue is closely related to what we were seeing before. Let's say that we have echo test, and we'll just in this case make sure that we use the Gnuwin32. It's very interesting, by the way, how if you hit tab in Windows it wipes away the rest of your command. So we're going to say test, make sure that we have the bin directory, test, and we're going to try a set command. Okay, so test has been replaced by test2, so this works fine. But let's try single quotes. Now that doesn't work because Windows interprets these single quotes in a different manner. So you have to remember to always use double quotes, where in Linux you would very regularly use single quotes. This of course creates a few restrictions as to what you can do, but it's not too bad as long as you remember to use double quotes. To give you a more challenging example, how about if you saw this? You would probably be debugging for 20 minutes trying to figure out what exactly it means with unknown command here, but again it's the strange parsing of these quotes that is different between Linux and Unix. So if we just use simply double quotes, it works fine. So just always remember double quotes. So we've seen two issues that you got to be aware of. You got to be aware of sometimes needing to specify where you want to run the utility from. If you're wanting to use a GNU utility specifically, you have to specify the path, and you have to use double quotes most of the time in order to avoid parsing issues by Windows. We've also seen some alternatives like tar and gzip that you can run directly from the command line here to untar and ungzip some files that you've downloaded directly on Windows instead of having to buy utilities, because there's a few, well, there's at least one that I'm aware of, a utility you have to buy simply to unpack tar files. Another interesting bit which you might run into sooner or later is if you run the ls command. As you can see, sometimes it takes a bit of time. So that's the only other thing that hangs in my memory that happens when you run ls instead of dir. I think it only happens the first time. Maybe it's some disk caching or something like that. I wonder if there's tools like df-h. Of course, you get you get errors like this, you might be able to get this to work. But so there's a few things that work a little bit different, or just with a few more issues than with Linux. But just having things available like set and awk and all these sort of things is very powerful when you're working with a lot of data. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed these MySQL, that you enjoyed the first episode of MySQL QA. So in this episode we've looked into pretty much everything Bash and GNU. We haven't looked too much into QA yet. We'll do that in the coming episodes. My name is Roel van der Paar. I hope this was helpful.